This is what happens when you disobey me." My father said it like a verdict, not a threat. He was standing over a steel burn barrel in the middle of our backyard, one hand holding a garden hose to protect his lawn, while everything I owned caught fire inside that drum. My clothes, my notebooks, my toolbox, the sketchpad I'd filled with building plans I'd never show him, and my grandmother's quilt, 3 winters of her hand stitching scrap denim and flannel into something that held heat better than any furnace in that house. He poured lighter fluid like he was salting a driveway. The flames climbed fast. Cotton shrank. Paper curled. The quilt caught at one corner and folded inward, colors tightening into black. I was 17. I stood 6 feet away and memorized the smell. He kept the hose trained on the grass, not my things. The grass? Sparks landed near the patio, and he sprayed them out without looking at me. Next door, Mrs. Klein watched from behind her fence. "This is what happens," he repeated, louder, for the neighborhood. 6 years later, I called him. He picked up on the first ring. I said 2 words. "Check. Mailbox." What he found there that evening changed everything. Just not the way he thought it would. Before I take you back to how a 17-year-old kid ended up standing in that yard watching his future burn, let me say this. If this story hits close to home, stay with me. Drop your city and local time in the comments. I read every one. It reminds me this isn't just a voice into the dark. And if you believe control doesn't always win in the end, subscribe. Now, let me take you back to Fort Wayne, Indiana, the fall I turned 17. My name is Nathan Cole Mercer. I'm 23 now. Back then, I was 17, living at 2137 Hawthorne Lane, Fort Wayne, Indiana. 3-bedroom ranch, quarter-acre lot, concrete driveway poured by my father's hands. Every mailbox on that street had either a flag decal or a church sticker. Every garage had a workbench. To my father, Victor Mercer, that house wasn't shelter. It was proof. Proof he could build something from nothing. Proof he didn't need anyone. Proof he was in charge. Dinner was at 6, not 6-ish. I cooked twice a week, took out trash every night, mowed the lawn in straight lines. No overlap. My younger brother, Dylan, sat at the table. 80. Left his plate. That was the order of things. My father sat at the head, remote in hand. The television only played what he chose. Auto auctions. College football. The house ran on his preferences the way an engine runs on fuel. In the living room sat his dark brown leather recliner, worn at the armrests. Nobody touched it. It faced the TV like a throne facing a courtroom. In the garage, bolted against the back wall, was a gray steel filing cabinet. Birth certificates, social security cards, insurance documents, mortgage papers. Mine were inside it. I had never held my own ID. When I needed my social security number for a warehouse job application, he wrote the digits on a scrap of paper, watched me memorize them, then burned the paper in the sink. My paychecks were direct deposited into a joint account he opened in both our names. I didn't have a debit card. Money went in. He decided what came out. The house was infrastructure, and infrastructure was control. Dylan was 2 years younger than me, but he was the one my father called the future. When I was 17, Dylan was 15 and already working weekends at the auto shop down on Lima Road. My father introduced him to customers like he was unveiling an investment. "That's my boy," he'd say. "He's got hands. He understands engines." When I told my father I wanted to study finance or real estate, he looked at me like I'd said I wanted to learn ballet. "You're my oldest son," he said once, standing in the garage, wiping grease from his hands. "You're supposed to build, not sit behind a desk." I was already building, just not what he wanted. Dylan's future was capital. Mine was liability. When Dylan dented the truck backing out of the driveway, my father laughed it off. Learning curve. When I forgot to replace a socket wrench in the exact drawer it belonged in, my father emptied the whole toolbox onto the floor and made me reorganize it piece by piece. Different standards, different stories. When I was 14, my father slammed his hand on the kitchen table so hard the plates jumped. I don't remember what triggered it. Maybe I questioned him. Maybe I didn't answer fast enough. He leaned across the table and shouted into my face. The next day, I told a school counselor. Child Protective Services showed up 4 days later. The house was clean, fridge stocked, no visible bruise. My father was calm, polite, controlled. Nothing came of it, but the story did. From that day forward, I wasn't Nathan. I was the son who called the cops on his own father. Thanksgiving, 4th of July, church potlucks, My father would bring it up like a cautionary tale. Some kids don't appreciate discipline. He'd say, they run to the authorities. Relatives stopped asking about me. Invites got quieter. Every disagreement ended the same way. You gonna call them again? He'd say. Go ahead. See who believes you this time. My mother would whisper in the kitchen, hands shaking around a coffee mug. Don't provoke him. Nate. She wasn't defending him. She was surviving him. In our house, masculinity meant obedience, and ambition that didn't orbit my father was considered betrayal. My grandmother, Evelyn Cole, died the spring I turned 15. Lung cancer. Diagnosed late. She spent her last months in a faded recliner by the living room window of her small house on the south side. A sewing basket at her feet and a metal tin full of buttons beside it. The quilt she left me wasn't decorative. It was built. Denim from my first pair of jeans. Flannel from one of her old nightshirts. Canvas from a work jacket my grandfather used to wear. She cut everything into squares and stitched them together by hand. Tight seams. Reinforced corners. No loose thread. She used to say, strong things are made slow. When she gave it to me, she didn't hug me long. She just folded it into my arms and said, you've got a head for numbers. Nathan, don't waste it trying to impress people who don't understand it. She was the only adult who ever said that without asking something in return. At night, I'd pull that quilt up to my chin and smell cedar and laundry soap, and something faint underneath, maybe the house she'd lived in for 40 years. It was the only thing in my room that felt permanent. The only object in that house that wasn't my father's. When I started staying late at the public library twice a week, my father thought I was logging volunteer hours. I wasn't. I was on a public computer filling out an online application to Ivy Tech Community College. Saving progress. Clearing browser history. Using the school counselor's email as my contact, I wrote my application essay about that quilt. About how structure matters. How seams hold weight. How you can take scraps and build something that lasts longer than the hands that made it. I didn't tell anyone. What I didn't know was that my father had set up parental monitoring on the school's network system after the CPS visit. The week I accessed college admissions pages 4 times. He got an alert. I knew something was wrong before I walked into the living room. The television was off. My father was sitting upright in his recliner, feet flat on the carpet, hands resting on the armrests, like a judge about to deliver sentencing. I sat on the couch, backpack still on, zipper pressing into my spine. I got an email from the school. He said. His voice wasn't loud. That made it worse. College admissions, resources. 4 visits this week. Silence. You want to explain that? I was just looking. I said. You were applying. Not a question. I told you no. I held his gaze. Didn't argue. He stood up slowly. The recliner rocked once behind him. You went behind my back. After the CPS stunt. After everything. He walked to the garage. I heard the filing cabinet open. Metal drawers sliding. Keys jangling. When he came back, he was holding a heavy-duty black trash bag. Outside. He didn't yell. He went to my room first. I followed because my body hadn't caught up with what was happening. He opened my closet and started pulling clothes down. Shirts. Jeans. My winter jacket. Into the bag. Efficient. Mechanical. Then my notebooks. The college brochure I'd hidden inside a math textbook. My calculator. He bent it in half to make it fit. Dylan stood in the hallway. Arms crossed. Watching. Not helping. Not stopping it. Just observing. Then my father grabbed the quilt. Not that. I said. 2 words. He looked at it. Then at me. Your grandmother filled your head with ideas. He said. Look where that got you. He carried everything downstairs. Out the back door. The burn barrel was already in the yard. Centered. Waiting. He upended the trash bag into the drum. My things fell in like they were debris. He doused them with lighter fluid. The chemical smell hit the air hard. He struck a long lighter and touched flame to denim. Fire climbed fast. Paper curled inward. Plastic warped. Heat pushed against my face. Then he dropped the quilt in. The patchwork caught at one corner. Denim tightened. Flannel blackened. The stitching held for a second longer than everything else. Then it was gone. 4 minutes. 17 years. He held the garden hose in his other hand. Not for my things. For the lawn. Sparks drifted, and he sprayed them down without looking away. Next door. Mrs. Klein stood frozen on her porch. This is what happens when you disobey me. My father said. Loud enough for the street. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I watched the smoke rise into a sky that didn't care. He thought he was teaching me obedience. He was teaching me something else. That night, my room was bare. No desk. No notebooks. No quilt. Just a mattress on the floor and walls that smelled faintly of lighter fluid drifting in from the yard. The house locked down at 9 like always. Deadbolt keyed on both sides. My father installed it himself years ago. Nobody left without him knowing. Around 11, my bedroom door opened. No knock. No light. My mother stepped inside and closed it softly behind her. She didn't sit at first. She just stood there, hands folded like she was bracing for impact. Then she crossed the room and pressed a white envelope into my hand. "Go," she whispered. I opened it using the streetlight leaking through the blinds. Inside, my birth certificate, my social security card, $360, 10s and 20s, folded flat. "I've been setting it aside," she said, "from groceries." Her voice wasn't shaking. It was tired. "Don't come back," she added. "Not until you can stand on your own." She squeezed my shoulder once. Not a hug, just pressure. Then she left. If she'd stayed another second, she would have cried. I waited 15 minutes. Then I opened my bedroom window. Ground floor, 3 feet down into the side yard. I was wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers. Nothing else. I didn't look back at the burn barrel. I walked 2 houses down to Mrs. Klein's porch and knocked once. She opened the door, looked at me, and stepped aside without asking a question. I left 2137 Hawthorne Lane with an envelope and a decision. I didn't know it yet, but that envelope was leverage, and leverage changes everything. Klein drove me to the Allen County Youth Shelter the next morning in her old Buick. She didn't cry. She just said, "Eat first, then plan." The shelter smelled like disinfectant and microwave noodles, vinyl mattresses, fluorescent lights that buzzed even when nobody was talking. Curfew at 10. Showers cut off after 7 minutes. 4 beds to a room. I took the one closest to the door. A caseworker named Mr. Alvarez helped me open a bank account in my own name. The first time I handed over my birth certificate and social security card, I felt something shift. Those documents had lived in a metal drawer my entire life. Now they were in my hands. I deposited $200, kept the rest in cash. Control starts small. I enrolled in GED prep because I'd been pulled from school before finishing junior year. My father had called and said I was handling family matters. The school logged it and moved on. No one chased. I studied at a folding table under humming lights. Math was easy. Structure makes sense when chaos doesn't. Within a week, I got a job at a distribution warehouse off Coliseum Boulevard. Night shift, 25 an hour. Steel 2 boots, back brace, pallets stacked shoulder high. I moved boxes from conveyor to truck for 8 hours straight. Then walked back to the shelter in the gray pre-dawn quiet when the world feels unfinished. My hands blistered. I didn't complain. I passed my GED 4 months later, 91st percentile in math. I didn't celebrate. I just enrolled at Ivy Tech Community College that fall. Business administration. Financial aid covered most of it. Warehouse wages covered the rest. At 18, I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 other guys from campus. We rotated sleep schedules because one of us always had a night shift. I took accounting, microeconomics, business law. I wasn't chasing passion. I was learning machinery, how money moves, how property transfers, how debt traps. During my second year, a cousin messaged me on Facebook. "Your dad took a loan on the house." I didn't respond. I checked the public records instead. Home equity line of credit. 9,000,000 filed 2 months after my brother's auto shop opened. Mercer and Son Performance Garage. Not Mercer. Sons. Just one. I didn't react. I saved the document as a PDF. One night after a 12-hour shift, I sat alone at the bus stop scrolling through Facebook and saw my father's post shared by an aunt. "Some kids choose the streets over family. We tried." 11 comments. Sympathy. Prayer hands. No one asked my side. I stared at the screen for a full minute. Then I locked the phone and put it in my pocket. You can't out-argue a narrative. You outlast it. There was a semester I almost quit. Working warehouse nights and taking 15 credit hours broke something physical in me. I fell asleep during a midterm once. Pen in hand. Woke up with 20 minutes left. Finished anyway. Passed. Graduated with my associate's degree at 21. No honors cord. No family in the audience. Just a certificate and my name printed correctly. That was enough. The degree got me an entry-level job at a small title company in Fort Wayne called Hammond and Pierce, $16 an hour. My job was to process property records, mortgages, lands, dates, foreclosure notices. I learned to read filings the way my father read torque specs. Quickly, precisely, looking for weakness. There's a pattern to financial collapse. Missed payments, default notice, right to cure, auction date. It's mechanical. And once you understand the mechanism, it stops being emotional. At 22, I got my real estate license. Not because I loved houses, because paper is power. Whoever holds the deed controls the ground under your feet. I worked under a broker named Carla Jennings. Sharp, efficient, no wasted words. She noticed I stayed late reading foreclosure calendars even when I didn't have to. Why, she asked once. I like knowing who's about to lose something. I said. She studied me for a second. Make sure you're not studying yourself. I didn't answer. By 23, I had savings. Not a lot, but enough to move alone into a small studio apartment and check my bank balance every Sunday morning without anxiety. 6 years earlier, I had climbed out a bedroom window with $360. Now I understood how leverage worked. And leverage, applied correctly, is quiet. Hammond and Pierce was small. 4 desks. 1 copier that jammed twice a week. Fluorescent lights that hummed like they were tired of their own existence. But the information that moved through that office could dismantle a man. Mortgage assignments, tax liens, bankruptcy filings, foreclosure notices. Every property in Allen County passed through systems, like ours, before it changed hands. Most people see houses. I saw structure. I learned how to trace ownership back 20 years. How to identify a lien buried under 3 refinances. How to read a legal description and visualize the lot lines without ever stepping on the soil. Paper is power. Carla Jennings ran her brokerage out of the suite next door. Mid-40s. Short hair. No patience for drama. She noticed I stayed late. One evening, she leaned into my doorway. You don't get paid overtime to study foreclosure lists. I know. Then why? Because they tell you who miscalculated. She watched me for a moment. You licensed yet? Working on it. I wasn't. The next morning, I signed up for the course. I passed the Indiana real estate exam 3 weeks after my 22nd birthday. Carla hired me that afternoon. Junior agent, commission-based, no safety net. It was exactly what I wanted. My first few months were quiet, small listings, modest commissions, starter homes with cracked driveways and aging roofs. I learned to calculate equity margins in my head, learned to walk through distressed properties and separate cosmetic damage from structural failure. Emotion clouds valuation. I didn't have that problem. Public records kept flowing. One afternoon, while pulling comps for a client interested in investment properties, I came across a familiar LLC filing. Mercer and Son Performance Garage. Registered 3 years earlier. I opened the attached documents. Operating losses. Outstanding vendor balances. Then I searched by property address. 2137 Hawthorne Lane. Home equity line of credit. 9,000,000 yuan. Cash out refinance 18 months later. Additional $68,000 rolled into a new mortgage. Total secured debt exceeded current market value by at least $40,000. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. On paper, my father was underwater. But men like him don't think in terms of paper. They think in terms of pride. I didn't call. I didn't message. I saved the filings. Weeks passed. Then the shop signage on Lima Road started flickering. 2 letters burned out. Mercer and Son became Erser and On. Small things tell big stories. One Sunday, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Nathan. My mother's voice. Thinner. Careful. I'm calling from Mrs. Klein's phone. Of course, she was. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask me to come back. She said, your father's under pressure. The shop isn't doing well. I listened. She was breathing like someone who had lived inside a sealed room too long. Are you safe? I asked. I'm the same, she said, which meant no. I told her I worked in real estate now. There was a pause. Your grandmother would have liked that, she said. Her voice broke, but only for a second. After we hung up, I sat on my apartment floor for a full minute, not emotional, calculating. 3 months later, while reviewing the weekly foreclosure publication as part of routine investor research, I saw it. 2137 Hawthorne Lane. Notice of default. Filed by Midstate Bank. 90 days. Delinquent. Auction scheduled in 60. I read the address 4 times. 3-bedroom ranch. Quarter-acre lot. Burn barrel in the backyard. Brass numbers beside the door. Default doesn't care about sentiment. Missed payments trigger sequence. Notice. Cure period. If no cure, the property goes to auction on the courthouse steps. Open to anyone with capital. I pulled the full record. Original mortgage. Helco. Refinance. 6 missed payments. No negotiation filings. No short sale listing. Either he believed the bank would wait, or he refused to ask for help. I closed the tab. Opened it again. Rent comps. Estimated after repair value. Calculated required deposit. 10% of opening bid. I didn't feel rage. I felt alignment. The same house where my father told me obedience meant survival was about to be sold for non-payment. Infrastructure was shifting. I didn't go looking for that opportunity. It came across my desk like every other distressed property. The difference was history. And history doesn't change numbers. It just makes them heavier. The foreclosure filing wasn't dramatic. No red stamp. No C-rings. Just a standard legal notice buried in a weekly publication most homeowners never read. Notice of default. Mid-State Bank versus Victor Mercer. Property. 2137 Hawthorne Lane. Auction date. To 60 days. That's it. But I knew what those lines meant. 90 days of missed payments minimum. Right to cure window expired. No restructuring filed. No short sale listed. No bankruptcy stay. He hadn't fought it. Or he'd waited too long. I pulled the mortgage history. Original loan. 14,800 million. Home equity line. 9,900 million. Cash out refinance. $68,000 rolled in. Total secured debt north of $210,000 on a house worth maybe $185,000 on a strong day. He wasn't just behind. He was underwater. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. The man who told me my house, my rules, had leveraged the foundation to fund my brother's shop, and the shop had failed. I didn't need to speculate. Vendor liens had already been filed against the LLC. The garage closed 3 months earlier. No public announcement, just locked doors. I opened a spreadsheet. Purchase at auction. Projected $135,000. $145,000. Closing costs and title fees. 5,000 yuan. Estimated repairs. Roof. Water heater. Plumbing updates $22,000. All in, around $170,000. After repair value. $195,000. $205,000. Instant equity margin if purchased correctly. It wasn't revenge math. It was clean investment logic. I took the numbers to Carla. She listened without interrupting. Is this about money? She asked. Or about your father? Both. I said. She nodded once. If this were any other property in that zip code at that price point, would you bid? Then treat it like any other property. She leaned forward slightly. Don't buy a fight. Buy an asset. I left her office and secured pre-approval through a local credit union that specialized in investment loans. Savings plus financing covered the deposit requirement. 10% of opening bid due immediately at auction in certified funds. I ordered a full title search. The deed was solely in my father's name. My mother had never been added. That detail mattered. It meant the transfer would be clean. No spousal complications. No consent required. Control simplifies paperwork. It also simplifies collapse. The auction date was set for a Tuesday morning at the Allen County Courthouse. I marked it in my calendar like any other closing. No drama. No announcement. 6 years earlier. I stood in that backyard and watched my belongings turn to smoke. Now I was reviewing loan amortization tables. Fire destroys fast. Debt destroys slowly. Both leave ash. The difference is one leaves paperwork. And paperwork can be acquired. The Allen County Courthouse smells like waxed floors and old paper. The foreclosure auction was held in a second-floor room with folding chairs and fluorescent lighting that flattened everything. About 20 bidders. Investors. Attorneys. A couple of guys who looked like they flipped houses between golf rounds. I signed in. Bidder number 12. Cashier's check in my folder. 10% of projected opening bid. I sat near the back. No one knew who I was. The auctioneer moved quickly through the docket. Duplex. Vacant lot. Small commercial unit. Then, Lot 8. 2137 Hawthorne Lane. Single family residence. 3-bedroom. 1.5 bath. Opening bid set at $132,000. My chest tightened once. Then steadied. A man in a gray polo raised his paddle immediately. Another bidder countered. I waited. The gray polo hesitated. Silence stretched. I raised my paddle. 141. The room went quiet for half a second. The gray polo glanced at his phone, ran numbers, then shook his head. The other bidder folded. The auctioneer scanned the room. Any further bids? Silence. $141,000. Bidder 12. No applause. No drama. Just paperwork. I walked to the clerk's table and signed the purchase agreement. Blue courthouse pin. Cheap. Plastic. Ink slightly faded. Name of grantee. Nathan C. Mercer. The clerk looked at the foreclosure filing. Then at me. Mercer. Same last name. Her eyes paused for half a second. She stamped the documents without comment. My father had missed 6 payments. Ignored cure notices. Let pride do the math instead of numbers. Now the property transferred. 17 days later, the deed was recorded at the county recorder's office. I picked up the certified copy in person, held it in both hands inside my car. Deed of conveyance. Grantor. Mid-State Bank. Grantee. Nathan Cole Mercer. No emotional surge. Just confirmation. 6 years earlier. He held a garden hose to protect his lawn while my things burned. Now the ground under that lawn legally belonged to me. I didn't celebrate. I scheduled a locksmith for after the statutory notice period. Ownership doesn't need applause. It needs documentation, and I had it. I drove to Hawthorne Lane the Saturday after the deed was recorded. The neighborhood looked smaller than I remembered. Lawns trimmed, flags hanging from mailboxes, pickup trucks in driveways. The brass numbers beside the front door were tarnished. He hadn't polished them, but the lawn was cut. Of course it was. My father was outside pushing the mower in straight lines when I parked across the street. Same flannel shirt. Same rigid posture. He didn't see me. I stepped onto the sidewalk and asked a woman walking her dog if she would take a photo for me. She smiled and obliged. In the picture, I'm standing in front of 2137 Hawthorne Lane. Not smiling. Just a present. I printed the photo at a CVS on Jefferson Boulevard. On the back, in block letters, I wrote, New owner. Deed recorded Allen County Recorder. Mercer. I placed it in a plain white envelope. No return address. That afternoon, I drove back, opened the mailbox at the curb, slid the envelope inside, raised the red flag. Sunday. I sat at my kitchen table with my phone in front of me. I dialed his number. It rang once. He picked up. Nathan. His voice was older, rougher. I didn't greet him. Check your mailbox. I hung up. I set the phone down and waited. For 6 years. Silence had been his weapon. Now it was mine. He didn't call back. He showed up. Tuesday morning. The glass door to Jennings Realty opened hard enough to hit the stopper. I was at my desk reviewing inspection addendums for a bungalow on Fairfield Avenue. Carla was in her office. 2 agents were on calls. A young couple sat in the waiting area flipping through listing sheets. My father stepped inside, like he still expected rooms to adjust around him. Work boots. Faded jeans. Ball cap with the old garage logo. He looked older, not weaker, just worn. Nathan. I looked up. Victor. Not Dad. He crossed the room in 4 strides. You think this is funny, he said. You think you can take my house. I capped my pen and set it down. It stopped being your house when you stopped paying the mortgage. His jaw tightened. I built that place. And you leveraged it. The room had gone quiet. Carla stepped out of her office but didn't interrupt. You had options. I continued. Cure period. Refinance negotiation. Short sale. Bankruptcy stay. You filed none of them. His voice rose. You don't know what you're talking about. I processed the foreclosure file myself. I said evenly. 6 missed payments. No response. Auction published twice. Open bidding. He leaned forward. Hands on my desk. I raised you. Fed you. Put a roof over your head. You controlled me. I said, that's not the same thing. The couple in the waiting area stopped pretending not to listen. He tried another angle. You called CPS on me. You embarrassed this family. I reported to school counselor what happened at that table. I replied. They followed protocol. You were cleared. You used it to isolate me for 3 years. His breathing got heavier. For a second, I thought he might flip the desk. Instead, he straightened. This is revenge. No, I said. It's acquisition. Carla stepped closer. She said calmly. This is a place of business. If you continue raising your voice, I'll ask you to leave. He ignored her. You think owning that paper makes you a man. I held his gaze. Building something without burning it down does. Silence landed hard. He had nothing left to escalate with. No leverage. No authority. Just volume? You have 30 days. I said. Standard post-sale occupancy notice under Indiana law. I won't shorten it. I won't extend it. His eyes flicked around the room. Strangers witnessing. Control evaporating in public. For the first time in my life. He didn't have the last word. He turned and walked out without slamming the door. The office stayed silent for a few seconds after. Then Carla looked at me. You good? She asked. I picked up my pen. Finished reviewing the inspection report. Ownership isn't loud. It's enforceable. Dylan called 4 days later. First time I'd heard his voice since I was 17. He sounded tired. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. Dad told me you bought the house. I did. Long pause. He's got 30 days. Right? Another pause. Longer this time. Look, Kelly and I are in a one-bedroom in Indianapolis. I can't take him. I didn't respond immediately. He kept talking. I didn't ask him to refinance like that. I didn't tell him to pull equity. Did you pay him back? I asked. Silence. That was the answer. He put $92,000 into the shop. I said. Then refinanced for another $68,000 to keep it alive. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't ask. He exhaled sharply. I'm not the bad guy here. I didn't say you were. Another pause. But I'm not the solution either. He swallowed. I could hear it through the line. So what happens now? He has 30 days. After that, I changed the locks. You're really doing this. More silence. 6 years ago, he watched my things burn and said nothing. Now he wanted me to fix the fallout. I can't take him. Dylan said again. I understand. I replied. And I meant it. But understanding doesn't mean absorbing the cost. When we hung up, I thought about the old garage sign. Mercer. Son. When the letters burned out, he didn't replace them. He just let the name fade. Now the foundation was doing the same. And no one was stepping underneath it. He moved out on day 27. Klein told me she watched from her porch as he loaded a borrowed pickup. 3 boxes. A duffel bag. The leather recliner. The throne left. The kingdom stayed. I waited a week before entering the house. New keys. Locksmith invoice. Contractor scheduled. Inside. The air was stale. Carpet stained. Kitchen faucet leaking. Empty beer cans in the recycling bin. Neglect settles fast when pride collapses. I walked room to room making notes. Roof replacement. Plumbing updates. Paint. When I reached the back bedroom, the one that used to be mine before it became Dylan's gym, I noticed the closet shelf. There was a shoebox pushed into the far corner. Old Nike box. Dust on the lid. I pulled it down. Inside were 3 sheets of paper. Charcoal drawings. Edges blackened. One was my grandmother's hands. I'd drawn them from memory when I was 16. Underneath the sketches was fabric. A single square. Denim and flannel stitched together. Edges singed. The faintest trace of cedar. He had gone back to the barrel. After the fire burned down. After the neighbors went inside. He'd reached into ash and pulled something out. Then kept it. For 6 years. He never mentioned it. Never apologized. Just stored it on a shelf. I sat on the floor of that room holding the fabric between my fingers. It didn't undo anything. It didn't change the fire. But it complicated it. Destruction is loud. Regret is quiet. I put the square back in the box. Then I carried it with me downstairs. My mother called 3 days after I changed the locks. Her voice sounded different. Not lighter. Just steadier. He's staying with Dale, she said. Couch in the basement. And you? I asked. I'm still here. She didn't say your house. She didn't have. Do you want to leave? I asked. Silence. Then, quietly. That was the first time in my life she answered a question without checking how it would land. Then stay. I said. Another pause. Under one condition. She waited. I draw up a lease. She inhaled softly. $250 a month. I continued. Covers utilities. Keeps it clean. Keeps it yours. I can pay that. She said immediately. I know. I drafted a simple lease agreement that night. Tenant. Patricia Mercer. Landlord. Nathan C. Mercer. Monthly rent. Renewable. She signed it at the kitchen table where my father used to sit at the head. Her hand trembled once, then steadied. The roof replacement started the following weekend. Charcoal gray shingles. Not the faded brown he preferred. I repainted the exterior white with slate blue trim. Different color palette. Different era. Inside. We pulled up the carpet together and found hardwood floors underneath. My father had covered them years ago because he didn't like the sound of footsteps. We sanded them down, sealed them, let the house breathe again. In the backyard, where the burned barrel had once stood, Mrs. Klein brought over a flat of marigolds. We planted them in the same patch of soil. Orange, bright, unapologetic. They come back every year, she said. I nodded. Some things survive heat. My mother slept that night in a house where the deed didn't belong to a man who measured obedience in silence. The deadbolt still locked, but now it opened from the inside. And for the first time in 24 years, she held the key. He called in October, 5 months after the auction, 1 month after the marigolds bloomed. I was sitting on the front porch of 2137 Hawthorne Lane, coffee in hand, watching the trees along the street turn amber. My phone buzzed. Victor. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. Nathan. Victor. Silence stretched. Wind through leaves. A dog barking 2 houses down. You always were stubborn, he said finally. I was always building, I replied. You just didn't like what I was building. He exhaled slowly. How's your mother? The first time he'd asked about her directly, she's stable. I said, she has a lease. She's staying. Another pause. I never thought you'd buy it. He said, I didn't buy it to take something from you. I answered, I bought it because I could. No anger in my voice. No apology either. You made your choices. I continued. I made mine. He didn't argue. Didn't escalate. Didn't try to reframe it as betrayal. There's a point when a man realizes the ground has shifted and shouting won't move it back. I kept something, he said quietly. I know. Silence again. Longer this time. I'm not pretending it didn't happen. I said. The fire. The isolation. All of it. He breathed in through his nose. But I'm not carrying it forever either. Another beat. So what is this, he asked. It's a conversation. I said. That's all. He didn't say goodbye. The line went dead. I set the phone down on the porch railing. Inside, my mother laughed at something on the television. The house didn't flinch. Neither did I. I'm sitting on the same porch now as I tell you this. Early morning, before the neighborhood wakes up. The brass numbers 2137 catch the sunrise. I polished them last week. Not because he did. Because I chose to. The lawn is cut. The roof is new. The hardwood floors inside don't muffle footsteps anymore. You can hear someone walking through the house now. That matters. 6 years ago, I stood in this yard and watched everything I owned collapse into ash. 17 years old. No coat. No documents in my pocket. Just smoke. I didn't win because I wanted revenge. I didn't buy the house to humiliate him. I bought it because the numbers made sense. Because I understood the mechanism. Because leverage favors the prepared. My grandmother stitched that quilt slowly. Reinforced corners. Tight seams. She built something that held under pressure. I rebuilt the same way. Not fast. Not loud. One paycheck. One exam. One filing. One signature at a time. If you're standing in your own version of that yard right now, watching something burn, watching someone decide your future for you, understand this. No one is coming to carry you out. You climb through the window yourself. You get the documents. You learn the system. You wait. Then you move when the timing is right. Control isn't volume. It's ownership. If this story meant something to you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe if you want more stories about rebuilding from nothing. And wherever you're listening from, drop your city and time in the comments. I read them. This story was created for entertainment purposes only. Do not attempt to replicate any actions described.